The first time Lena saw the cabin, it looked like a mistake someone had tried to hide. It sat high on the mountain, tucked behind a line of tall pine trees that leaned slightly as if they were tired of fighting the wind. The roof sagged in the middle. The porch rails were half gone. A narrow chimney stuck up like a broken finger. The windows were dark, not because of curtains, but because time had laid dust and spiderwebs over the glass until it looked like the cabin had closed its eyes. Lena parked her small Jeep on the gravel shoulder and stepped out into air that tasted clean and sharp. The road behind her curled down into the valley, where the town looked like a small cluster of lights and roofs. Up here, it was quiet except for the hiss of wind through needles and the slow creak of trees. She hugged her jacket closer and stared at the cabin. She had not planned to buy a ruined building on a mountain. But 3 months ago, her life had folded in on itself like wet paper. The art studio she worked in had closed. The landlord for her apartment had raised rent again. And her mom's old house in town had been sold, leaving Lena with only a few boxes of memories and a feeling that she was floating with no direction. Then she had seen the listing online late at night. A single photo of a cabin in the mountains. The words were short: abandoned property. Sold as is. No guarantees. The price was lower than anything in town. The agent had sounded tired on the phone, like he had repeated the same warning to many people. It's been empty a long time, the agent had said. Not much left but the bones. Lena had heard bones and thought, that's enough. A place with bones could be rebuilt. A life with bones could be rebuilt too. Now she was here, standing in front of the cabin, feeling the mountain wind tug at her hair, and wondering if she had been brave or simply desperate. She walked up the path. The weeds were tall, brushing her boots. Near the porch steps, she spotted a rusted metal bucket and a pile of grey boards that might once have been part of the railing. One step creaked under her weight, but it held. The front door stuck at first. She pushed harder and it opened with a long, complaining groan. The smell inside was old wood, cold air, and damp. Dust floated in pale light from the windows. A small living room opened in front of her, with a stone fireplace that still looked strong. There was a table, but one leg was broken. A chair leaned against the wall. The floorboards were scratched, and in the corner, something had chewed a hole through a cardboard box. Lena stepped slowly, listening. No animals ran. No sudden movement. She walked to the fireplace and ran her fingers along the stone. It was rough but steady. Whoever built it had cared about getting it right. On the wall above the fireplace hung something that surprised her. It was a wooden carving, faded with time but still clear, a mountain ridge with a small cabin drawn under it. Beneath the carving, a name was cut into the wood in neat letters. Ah, Hale. Lena stared at it. The name looked like a signature, not like a decoration bought from a store. It felt personal, like a quiet claim. She moved into the kitchen. The cabinets were old but solid. The sink had rust stains. A broken kettle sat on the counter. She opened a drawer and found a few bent spoons and one small knife with a wooden handle, worn smooth by hands that used it often. Above the kitchen table, there was another detail, a hook on the ceiling, and on it, a tiny brass bell. It was dull with age. She lifted it carefully and shook it once. It gave a soft, thin ring. The sound startled her because it was alive. It cut through the cabin's silence like a spark. Lena put it back gently. She climbed the narrow stairs to the loft. The steps were steep. The loft held a single bed frame without a mattress. On the far wall, a small window looked out onto the valley. The view was wide and breathtaking, like the whole world had opened its arms. Lena stood at the window and breathed in. For the first time in months, her chest didn't feel tight. She looked down at her hands. They were dusty already. I can do this, she whispered, though no one was listening. But the cabin, in its quiet way, felt like it heard her. Over the next week, Lena started doing what she always did when life felt too heavy. She made a plan. She drove up every morning with supplies. A toolbox, cleaning rags, bags of trash, a small camping stove, a lantern. She worked until her arms ached and her back complained, then drove down to town before dark. At first, her jobs were simple. She cleaned. She swept. She opened windows to let the stale air escape. She dragged broken furniture onto the porch and sorted what could be saved. Day by day, the cabin began to look less like a forgotten place and more like a home waiting to wake up. On the third day, while she was sweeping the living room, she noticed something strange. The dust on the floor near the fireplace was disturbed. Not by her. She hadn't been there yet that morning. There were faint marks, like someone had stepped there and then stepped back. Lena froze, broom in hand. Her mind raced through options. A wild animal. A person. A squatter. She moved quietly to the door and stepped onto the porch, scanning the trees. Nothing. The pine branches moved gently in the wind. The road was empty. No sound but the mountain. She went back inside and stared at the floor again. The marks were too neat to be an animal. And there were two, like boot prints. Her heart started beating faster. She told herself she was imagining it. She had been tired. She had been alone. Still, she locked the door from the inside while she worked. That night, she lay in bed in her small apartment in town and kept seeing those faint marks. Her mind kept returning to the carved name, R. Hale. Maybe the builder had never truly left. On the fifth day, Lena found the first clue that the cabin still held secrets. She was cleaning out a storage closet when her hand brushed something hard behind a pile of old cloth. She pulled the cloth away and found a small wooden box about the size of a thick book. It had a simple latch. Her fingers paused on the latch. She hesitated. It felt wrong to open it, like it belonged to someone else. But she reminded herself that she had bought the cabin. Everything inside came with it. Still, the box looked cared for. Protected. Hidden. She opened it slowly. Inside were papers, folded carefully. A small compass. And a photo. Lena picked up the photo first. It showed a younger man standing in front of the cabin when it was new. The porch rails were straight. The roof was strong. The chimney looked freshly built. Snow covered the ground, and the man had his hands in his pockets, smiling like the mountain belonged to him. On the back of the photo, written in dark ink, were the words, "For the day it returns." Lena's skin prickled. She unfolded the papers. They weren't letters. They were drawings, careful, detailed sketches of the cabin structure. Measurements. Notes. A full plan. This wasn't just a house plan. It was a blueprint made by someone who knew every piece of the cabin like it was part of his own body. One page had a simple line written at the bottom. "If the bell rings, I'm home." Lena stared at that sentence. The small brass bell in the kitchen came to her mind instantly. She set the papers back in the box with shaky hands and closed the latch. Her breath felt loud in the quiet cabin. She looked toward the kitchen, though she couldn't see it from where she stood. The bell had rung once. She had rung it. Had someone heard it? That evening, as Lena packed up to leave, she heard something outside. A soft crunch. Then another. Footsteps on gravel. She turned quickly, her heart leaping into her throat. The front door was still open. Cold air rushed in. Lena stepped to the doorway. A man stood at the edge of the yard, half hidden by the trees. He wasn't close enough for her to see his face clearly, but she could tell he was tall. He wore a dark jacket and a cap pulled low. A backpack hung on one shoulder. For a second, neither of them moved. The mountain wind swept between them, carrying the smell of pine and something metallic, like cold stone. Then the man took one slow step forward. Lena's fingers tightened on the doorframe. "Hello," she called, trying to sound steady. The man stopped again. His voice, when it came, was calm but rough, like it didn't get used often. "You're inside my house." Lena's stomach dropped. Her mind flashed through the purchase papers. The contract. The agent's words. She had done everything right. "I bought this property," she said carefully. "It's mine now." The man let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but it wasn't happy. "That's what they told you," he said. Lena held her ground, though her knees wanted to shake. "Who are you?" she asked. The man stepped closer, and now she could see his face. He looked older than the man in the photo, but the shape of his jaw and the calm eyes were the same. His hair was darker with a few strands of gray at the temples. His face was tired in a way that didn't come from age alone. It came from carrying something heavy for too long. He looked at the cabin like it was a person he had loved and lost. Then he looked at Lena. "My name is Ron," he said. "Ron Hale." The name hit Lena like a cold splash of water. The carving above the fireplace. The photo. The note. "Ah, Hale." She swallowed. "You built this," she said, more like a statement than a question. Ron's eyes didn't leave her face. "Yeah," he said. "And I came back because I heard the bell." Lena's throat went dry. I rang it," she admitted. Ron's gaze shifted past her, into the cabin, like he was listening for something deeper than her words. "You shouldn't have," he said quietly. Lena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "Why?" she asked. Ron didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, and his eyes flicked toward the woods behind Lena's jeep, as if checking the shadows. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because the bell doesn't just call me," he said. "It calls what I tried to leave behind." Lena's heart hammered. "What did you leave behind?" she whispered. Ron's face held a flicker of something: fear, regret, warning. "A secret," he said. "And if you're restoring this cabin, you're about to dig it up." He looked at her tools stacked near the porch. The bags of trash. The clean windows. Then he said the words that made Lena's stomach twist hard. "You already started, didn't you?" Lena couldn't lie. She shook her head slowly. Ron closed his eyes for a brief moment, like he was bracing himself. Then he opened them and said, "You need to come with me. Right now. Before it gets dark." Lena stood frozen in the doorway, caught between the life she knew and the mystery standing in front of her. The wind picked up, and somewhere in the kitchen, the tiny brass bell gave the faintest tremble, like something unseen had brushed it. Lena's voice came out thin. "Where are we going?" she asked. Ron looked into the trees again, then back at her. "To the place I buried the truth," he said. "And to the reason this cabin was never meant to be found." Lena did not answer Ron right away. The mountain was changing as the sun dropped lower. The air grew colder. Shadows stretched longer between the trees. The cabin, which had started to feel welcoming over the past few days, now seemed to pull inward, like it was holding its breath. "I'm not going anywhere until you explain," Lena said, steadying her voice. "This is my property now. You can't just show up and scare me." Ron studied her face for a moment. He looked surprised, maybe even impressed. "You're braver than most," he said. "Or maybe you're just stubborn." "Both," Lena replied. Ron nodded once. "Fair enough. But we shouldn't talk about this outside." He glanced again toward the trees, and this time Lena followed his gaze. For a split second, she thought she saw movement between the trunks. Not clear. Just a shift of shadow. Her heart jumped. Ron noticed. "You saw it too," he said quietly. "What was that?" Lena asked. "Reason number one, we go inside," Ron said. They stepped into the cabin together. Ron closed the door behind them and slid the old bolt into place. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Inside, the cabin felt smaller with another person in it. Warmer too. Ron took off his backpack and set it near the fireplace like he had done it 1,000 times before. He walked straight to the kitchen and looked up at the brass bell. "It still hangs," he said softly. "You said it called more than you," Lena said. "What did you mean?" Ron did not answer immediately. He moved to the table and sat down slowly, as if his body remembered the chair even though it was gone. Lena stayed standing. "I built this place when I wanted to disappear," Ron said. "No noise. No people. Just the mountain." Lena crossed her arms. "Disappear from what?" Ron's jaw tightened. "From a mistake." Silence settled between them. "You left," Lena said. "Why come back now?" Ron looked up at her. "Because you rang the bell." She felt a knot form in her stomach. Ron reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully and placed it on the table. It was a second compass. This one was darker, scratched, and the glass was cracked. "I made 2 of these," Ron said. "They are paired." When one moves, the other reacts. Lena frowned. That doesn't make sense. Ron met her eyes. It doesn't have to. It just works. He turned the compass slightly. The needle trembled, then slowly shifted. From somewhere inside the cabin, Lena heard a faint sound. Not the bell this time. A low creak, like wood settling, but deeper. Her breath caught. You feel that? Ron asked. Yes, Lena whispered. That's the cabin answering, Ron said. Lena shook her head. Cabins don't answer. This one does, Ron replied. Because it was never just a cabin. He stood and walked toward the fireplace. Did you clean behind here? He asked. No, Lena said. Why? Ron pushed against the stone. One section moved slightly. Lena's eyes widened. I didn't even see that. Most people don't, Ron said. He pressed again, harder this time. The stone panel slid aside, revealing a narrow space behind it. Inside was a metal door, small but solid, built directly into the mountain rock. Lena's heart began to race. What is that? She asked. Ron exhaled slowly. That's the reason this place was abandoned. He opened the metal door just enough to let a cold draft spill out. The air that came from inside was different. Sharper. Heavier. Lena took an involuntary step back. I'm not going in there, she said. You don't have to yet, Ron replied. But you need to know what you bought. He closed the door again and leaned against the fireplace. Years ago, Ron said, this mountain was part of a survey project. They were looking for deep stone pockets. Stable ground. Places that could hold things long term. What kind of things? Lena asked. Ron hesitated. Things people didn't want to deal with anymore, he said. Lena felt a chill crawl up her arms. I was hired to build a structure above one of those pockets, Ron continued. Something that looked normal. Something quiet. Something no one would question. A cover, Lena said. Yes, Ron replied. A shell. Lena's mind raced. So what's inside? Ron looked at her with eyes full of regret. Not what, he corrected. Who? Lena's breath left her in a rush. No, she said. That's not possible. Ron's voice dropped. It is when people stop seeing others as human. Lena stepped away from him, toward the stairs. I think you should leave. Ron did not move. I can't. Not anymore. The cabin creaked again, louder this time. Something shifted beneath their feet. Lena grabbed the table to steady herself. That wasn't normal, she said. No, Ron agreed. It's waking up. They did not sleep that night. Lena insisted on staying. She did not trust Ron enough to leave him alone with the cabin, and she did not trust the cabin enough to leave it alone with Ron. They sat near the fireplace, lantern light casting long shadows. Ron told her pieces, slowly. The mountain project had been shut down suddenly. Funding pulled. Records sealed. The people inside the chamber were supposed to be moved. They never were, Ron said. Why didn't you tell someone? Lena asked. I did, Ron said. I lost my job. My home. Everything. His voice was flat, like he had said these words many times in his head. They told me the chamber would stay closed. That the mountain would hold. And the bell? Lena asked. Ron looked at it again. The bell was my promise, he said. I told myself if it rang again, I would come back. No matter what. Lena swallowed. And now? And now, Ron said, someone else has touched this place. Changed it. Lena felt a surge of guilt. I was just fixing it. I know, Ron said gently. But restoration wakes memory. A sudden knock slammed against the door. Lena screamed. Ron was on his feet instantly. He moved fast, grabbing a long metal rod from his backpack. The knock came again. Harder. Open, a voice called. We know someone's inside. Lena's heart pounded. Who is that? Ron's face darkened. That's who really owns what's beneath us. The knock turned into pounding. "Last warning," the voice said. Ron looked at Lena. "If they open that door, they take everything. Including you. What do we do?" Lena whispered. Ron glanced at the fireplace. At the hidden door. Then at the stairs. "We go down," he said. "Before they force their way in." Another heavy hit shook the door. Lena's hands trembled. "I don't want to go down there." Ron met her eyes. "Neither do I. But some truths don't stay buried." The pounding grew louder. Wood cracked. Lena nodded, fear burning in her chest. Ron moved to the fireplace and slid the stone panel aside again. The metal door stood waiting. He opened it wide. Cold air rushed out, carrying a low hum, like distant breathing. Lena hesitated only a second. Then she followed Ron into the dark. Behind them, the front door finally gave way, splintering inward. And as Lena stepped into the hidden chamber beneath the cabin, she realized the mountain had been waiting for this moment far longer than she had been alive. The metal door closed behind them with a heavy sound that felt final. Darkness wrapped around Lena like thick cloth. The air was cold enough to sting her lungs. Ron switched on a small flashlight, and the beam cut through the dark, revealing a narrow passage carved straight into the mountain. The walls were smooth stone, not rough like a cave. This place had been shaped carefully. Lena followed close behind Ron, her footsteps echoing softly. Each step felt like a move away from the life she had known and into something that could not be undone. "How far does this go?" she asked. "Not far," Ron said. "But deep enough." The passage opened into a wide chamber. Lena stopped. The space was larger than the cabin above. The ceiling arched high, held up by thick stone supports. Soft lights lined the walls, some flickering, some steady, as if they had never fully gone dark. In the center of the chamber stood several glass rooms, each about the size of a small bedroom. Inside them were people. Lena covered her mouth. They were alive. Sitting. Standing. Some leaned against the glass. Others lay on narrow beds. They were older than she expected, but not weak. Their eyes followed Ron and Lena as they entered. "Who are they?" Lena whispered. Ron's voice broke. "The Forgotten." A man with gray hair stepped closer to the glass of one room. He raised his hand slowly, pressing it against the surface. Lena felt tears burn her eyes. "They were part of an experiment," Ron said. "People who agreed to help test long-term isolation and deep earth living. At first." "At first," Lena repeated. "When the project failed, the people in charge decided it was easier to seal the chamber than to explain what they had done," Ron said. "They told the world the volunteers were relocated." "But they weren't," Lena said. Ron shook his head. "They were left. With supplies. With systems meant to last decades. And with a promise that never came." The man behind the glass mouthed words. Lena leaned closer and read his lips. "Help." Her knees felt weak. "We can't just leave them," she said. "We won't," Ron replied. "That's why I came back." A sudden sound echoed through the chamber. The metal door behind them rattled. "They followed us," Lena said. "Yes," Ron said. "They always do." "Who are they?" Lena asked. Ron looked at her. "The ones who kept this secret alive. By keeping it buried." The door shook again. Voices echoed through the passage. "Come out," someone shouted. "This is your last chance." Lena looked at Ron. "We can't fight them." "No," Ron said. "But we can expose them." He moved quickly to a control panel on the wall. It was old but still active. He pressed a series of buttons with practiced hands. "What are you doing?" Lena asked. "I built this place," Ron said. "I made sure it had a voice." The lights in the chamber brightened. A low hum filled the air. "What voice?" Lena asked. Ron looked at her. "The kind that reaches far beyond this mountain." The glass rooms unlocked with a soft click. The man with gray hair stepped out slowly, like he was afraid the ground might vanish. Others followed, blinking in the brighter light. Lena stepped forward. "We're getting you out," she said, her voice shaking but strong. The man nodded. "We heard the bell," he said. "We knew someone remembered." Behind them, the metal door burst open. 3 men entered the chamber, wearing dark coats and hard expressions. They froze when they saw the open rooms and the people standing free. "You shouldn't have done that," one of them said. Ron stood between them and Lena. "You shouldn't have done this." One of the men raised a device in his hand. Before he could use it, the lights flared brighter, and a loud tone filled the chamber. "What is that?" the man shouted. Ron smiled, but there was no joy in it. A broadcast. Screens hidden in the walls flickered to life, showing live feeds of the chamber. The people. The open rooms. The truth. "Every channel," Ron said. "Every network that still listens." Lena realized what he had done. "You planned this," she whispered. "I hoped I would never have to," Ron said. "But hope ran out a long time ago." The men backed away slowly. "You don't understand what you're doing," one of them said. "This will destroy lives." Ron's eyes hardened. It already did. The sound of helicopters echoed faintly through the mountain. Sirens followed. The men turned and ran. Lena let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for years. The man with grey hair looked at Ron. "You came back," he said. Ron nodded, tears finally breaking free. "I promised." The mountain did not stay quiet after that. By morning, the area was filled with vehicles. Lights. People asking questions. The cabin stood at the center of it all, no longer hidden. Lena watched from the porch as the rescued people were guided carefully down the path. Wrapped in blankets. Surrounded by care. Ron stood beside her, silent. "They'll take this place apart," Lena said softly. "Yes," Ron replied. "They have to." She looked at the cabin. The windows. The fireplace. The bell. "I wanted to restore it," she said. "I didn't know I was restoring the truth." Ron looked at her. Sometimes they're the same thing. Days passed. The story spread everywhere. The mountain chamber. The abandoned people. The cabin that hid it all. Investigations began. Apologies followed. Some things could never be undone, but they were finally seen. Lena packed up her tools. "So that's it," she said. "No more cabin." Ron shook his head. "The structure will be changed. The secret is gone." He hesitated. "But the land is still yours." Lena smiled faintly. "I don't think I want to sell it." Ron raised an eyebrow. "No. I came here to rebuild my life," she said. "I think I still can." They stood together, looking at the mountain. "What will you do?" Lena asked. Ron thought for a moment. "Help them adjust. Tell their stories. Finish what I started." Lena reached into the cabin one last time and took down the wooden carving with the name. "Ah, Hale." She handed it to Ron. "It belongs to you," she said. Ron held it carefully. "Thank you." As he turned to leave, Lena stopped him. "The bell," she said. "What happens to it now?" Ron smiled, softer this time. "Now it just rings for home." Lena stepped into the kitchen and lifted the small brass bell. She rang it once, clearly. The sound was warm, gentle, not a warning, not a call for fear. A beginning. Outside, the mountain stood quiet, not because it was hiding something, but because it finally had nothing left to hide. And for the first time since Lena had driven up that winding road, she knew she had come to the right place. The cabin had changed her life. But more than that, it had given it meaning.